Hello, my name's Matt and this is Pixel Burn, where I take a look at some of the more important, interesting or irritating things to have happened in gaming this week. And this week's episode is brought to you by strong antibiotics and hospital issue steroids. Yes, thanks to a severe chest infection that forced me to go to hospital, this week's Pixel Burn will be shorter than usual. Quite frankly, it's a miracle I managed to get a script written, although that didn't stop me paying attention to what's been going on this week. Like people losing their very minds and dignity over this weekend's closed beta test for Titanfall, access to which was granted to Joe and Jane public for the purpose of testing things, unsurprisingly. Twitter and various forums were awash with countless people giving away spare beta keys, and countless more people begging for them like they were tickets for the last chopper out of Saigon. Nevertheless, plenty of people got into the beta and have had varying degrees of fun blowing each other up and stomping about in giant robots. The beta was scheduled to last only up until February the 18th, whereupon all these testers would return to the humdrum misery of their daily lives. That is until Respawn Entertainment co-founder Vince Zampella announced it would be going on a bit longer, and opening up to everyone, no beta keys required. The idea being to test the service to breaking point, see if the game holds together and make sure everything works under the most extreme circumstances. Because that's what beta tests are for, testing things. In other news, the new single-player story DLC for The Last of Us called Left Behind came out this week. Taking place before the main game, but after the 4-part Dark Horse comic series The Last of Us American Dreams, Left Behind puts you back in Ellie's shoes as she and her chum Riley endure day-to-day life in the Boston quarantine zone. Reviews have been positive overall, although some have criticised it for being too short for its price. It also reportedly adds nothing new in the way of gameplay, being more of the same Manhunt-esque stealth bits, but with far less faffing about with ladders this time. Still, if you like The Last of Us and want more stories set in that world, then you've probably bought it and finished it already. Those who are tempted but can't justify $15 for 2 hours of content might want to wait for a PlayStation Store sale or something. You do have those on the PlayStation Store, right? You know, sales. Meanwhile, Bayonetta 2 still isn't out yet. And to rub it in, Platinum Games have released a new gameplay trailer showing the game running at 60 frames per second. It looks, frankly, fucking amazing, although the anti-aliasing could use some improvement. Despite that, it still manages to put a dent in my resolve to never buy a Wii U. Unfortunately, the footage I'm showing here doesn't do it justice, because YouTube hobbles most videos down to a mediocre 30 frames per second. Luckily for you, I've included a handy link to the full 60fps HD trailer in the description below, so go download that now and thank me for it later. Much to my sadness and dismay, Bayonetta 2 still doesn't have a confirmed release date. All we know is it'll be out sometime this year, and only for the Wii U. This week, Valve introduced the beta for Steam tags, a way for members of the Steam community to instantly brand any game on the Steam store with any random word shat out by the throbbing meat inside their skulls. The basic idea is if enough people apply the same tags, then those tags become featured categories, in theory helping consumers discover fun new games to play. For example, if there's a game you really love but has always been criminally underrated, you can tag it with underrated. If enough other people tag it as underrated as well, then buyers looking for underrated games will see your favourite game in that tag category. Likewise, if you think a particular game is poor, too short, casual, or even lesbians. Like a lot of Valve's ideas, Steam tags sounds good on paper. Help customers find new games that they might enjoy, bring a touch of Netflix style personalisation to Steam, and best of all, get the internet to do it for you for free. What could possibly go wrong? The result has been a bit like if Tesco or Walmart let customers run wild amongst the aisles with a label printer, no oversight and almost complete anonymity. With that kind of power and freedom, would you really be tagging stuff with boring labels like Great Value or Taste Super? Of course you bloody wouldn't. You'd be printing stuff like This detergent is for pig fuckers and cackling like a loon, because deep down we're all savage, degenerate animals restrained only by a fragile leash of societal disapproval. Hence, lots of self-appointed smartasses with delusions of wit and the attention span of a dead goldfish, tagging acclaimed titles like Gone Home with phrases like Not a Game, and Dear Esther with Walking Simulator. Although they do have a valid point about Dear Esther, since it is literally all about walking. And I mean literally. Press the W key and walk around a landscape soaking up the sights. That's the limits of its interactivity. At least with Gone Home you get to rifle through people's drawers while listening to terrible songs. I don't have it anymore. While this has all been a riot of laughs for Steam users, it's not been quite so amusing for developers. At launch, it was almost impossible for a game's developer to remove or in any way challenge any tags put on their games, like the one I put on Outlast that said Big Fat Cocks. The reasoning for this, according to Valve themselves in the Steam Tags FAQ, is tags can be a good indicator of when there is a mismatch between how you perceive your game and how your game is perceived by customers. Often this is simply because there is some piece of information regarding the game that customers feel is missing from the store page. Or in other words, tough shit, suck it up. Now, I'm not saying developers and publishers should be allowed to dictate 100% what is said about their games. If a game is a stinking, festering, rancid pile of garbage, made by a bunch of thick-headed idiots with absolutely zero professionalism, naming no names here, then consumers have a right to know, and Steam tags can play a role in that. Some of the more popular tags on Steam right now are also genuinely amusing. At the moment, however, the system is simply too vulnerable to abuse from bandwagons of fanboys with axes to grind, blindly shitting on anything they don't like for entirely arbitrary reasons, as well as shitting on games they supposedly do like, such as Dark Souls, tagged as casual by disgruntled fans because it's not as niche as it used to be and playing it doesn't make them feel like special hardcore little snowflakes anymore. Boo-hoo-hoo-hoo. To their credit, Valve have since added the option to actually report inappropriate tags, entrusting the same people who ripped the system to now fix the system. People can report god-awful tags like this one to downvote it, and if enough people do so, it's banished to oblivion where it belongs. Which brings us to what is currently the only saving grace about this terrible idea, that it's in beta and still subject to change. So here's a suggestion for you, Valve. How about not letting people tag games that they don't bloody well own? Like I did with Call of Duty Ghosts, a game I don't own and never will, but still tagged as boiled slurry for drooling imbeciles, because I could. Steam Tags is essentially Valve's attempt to give Steam a Netflix-like level of fine classification without spending any money, and it shows. With a lot more work put into it, it might one day be fit for purpose, but as it stands right now it's a bloody shambles, launched without any sort of proper forethought and too dependent on the fantasy that people are inherently good and decent. It also proves the old saying that if you give someone an inch they'll take a mile, and tag it as a casual lesbian walking simulator with nanomachines, son. That's all for this episode of Pixel Burn. If you liked it, please do let me know. At the very least, I hope you found it tolerable. If you didn't like it, well, I like to think I've got an excuse this week. Normal service should resume soon, so until then, you can go now.